Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, dhammang saranang gacchami, sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Panatipata viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinadana viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kamesu miccachara viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musawada viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Surameraya majja pamadatthana viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Very good. Okay, now let us get ready for our meditation. As usual, at the start, make sure you're sitting comfortably. Remember, when you are doing on your own, at the start, check your posture. Sit comfortably and in a balanced way. Put your palms together or on your laps or resting on the chair rest. Your legs comfortably folded together, or if you're sitting on a chair, the feet placed on the ground comfortably. Then just close your eyes and breathe as if you're a baby. Gentle breathing, relaxed breathing, just as you are. No controlling of the breath, just as you are. Let the breath come in, let it go out. The word let is very important. Let go of the breath, so to speak. Remember, meditation is mental renunciation, letting go on the mental level. You are now doing what monks do or should do, according to the Buddha. We're going to do some breath meditation. Just be aware of your breathing. You know that you're breathing. Focus on that fact. Of course, if you find that difficult, whenever you like, you can focus at your nose tip, if you like, where the breath touches your nose tip. Or if you are used to it, you can watch the rising and falling of the belly, about 2 fingers breadth above the belly button, above the navel. So there are different ways of watching. In the first stage, we will count the breaths. As your breath comes in, goes out, count 1. In, out, 2. In, out, 3. In, out, 4. In, out, 5. 1 to 5, 1 to 5. You can count up to 10 if you like. but don't go beyond 10. It's too big. Don't count less than 5. It's too small. Anytime you make a mistake, just go back to number 1 again. Just start again. First stage, counting. Easy. Sometimes your breathing may change. Sometimes the breathing becomes deep, sometimes shallow, sometimes fast, sometimes slow. Whenever you feel distracted, just smile at the distraction, let it go. After every count, just smile, meditate happily. And for those of you, some of you may not like counting, or counting may not work for some people. It's very normal. For those of you who do not like counting, when you practice on your own, you can go straight into stage 2, in-out stage. As your breath comes in, notice the breath coming in. Notice it as in. When the breath goes out, note it as out. And smile. In, smile, out, smile. Whenever the mind wanders away, bring it back. Bring it back to the breath. Some of you may find you have a lot of thoughts or some kind of distraction. That's very normal too. It shows you have started to meditate. So you're becoming more aware of your mind. So even when you are distracted and you are aware of it, you are still meditating. Just smile at the distractions, let them go. So be patient with yourself. What you're doing now is like doing your physical exercise. You do bit by bit. Do it happily. You're really sleepy or tired, or you find some difficulty in your sitting, you can try the deep cleansing breath. Take a deep breath, first air into your stomach, and then air into your thorax, the upper part. So your lungs are full of air, feel the tightness, absorb all the sleepiness, all the negative emotions, the darkness. Hold it tight for a while, as long as you can. And then when you're ready, just breathe it out through the mouth, like silent whistling. Just let it out, like blowing hot tea cold. Let it all out to the mouth, out, 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 until all the air come out and back to normal breathing. So you catch your breath and go back to your normal practice. This is to freshen you up, recharge yourself. As you watch your breath will become gentler and slower. And you begin to notice spaces in between the breaths. So you are getting into stage 3. When you notice the spaces. So note the in breath, space, smile at the space. Out breath, space, smile at the peace. The spaces may not be regular. Sometimes the in space is short, out space is long, or the reverse. Just notice the space, the peace, even joy of that space. In your own practice, this third stage happens by itself. So you have to wait for it to happen. You cannot make it happen. Take as long as you need to count or to watch the in out. Feel the peace. Smiling whenever you like. In space, out space. Fourth stage also, you cannot make it happen. Fourth stage will happen by itself. You just wait for it, notice it. In the case of the fourth stage, you feel so peaceful that you don't want to say anything because it's so peaceful. Saying anything seems to disturb it. Now that's the fourth stage, silence. No need to say anything. You feel the peace as you breathe in and out. You might not even notice the breath because the breath and the mind have merged. The breath has become the mind. So it's just peace, joy, even some bright light. At the slightest notice of any thoughts or distraction, just smile at it. Or if you like, you can gently whisper, peaceful, peaceful. Only if you need to. Otherwise, just stay with it. This wonderful, spacious, healing space. Now, at this point, let us review our practice. Review our practice. Remember the peaceful moments, joyful moments. This will help you in your future meditation. Or whenever you need inner peace, remember this wonderful experience, even for a split second. Or make a note of the distractions that you faced, what happened, what are the conditions. Make a note of it so that you are better prepared the next time and you know how to overcome this kind of distraction. Review your practice. Now, before we end, we do a bit of just sitting quietly to come back to this class, come back to the world. So just sit quietly, gently open your eyes. This is called just sitting. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Right, very good. Let us now go on to our study. Okay, now today's sutta is called Mahanidana Sutta, the discourse on the great connections. Nidana, connections, the links of dependent arising. D15. Now, it is said that this sutta is the most difficult of all the suttas because it deals with the mind. In fact, I was quite reluctant to teach it at first, but when I look at it, I said, wow, it's so beautiful. Then we need to learn this. So as I teach, I will learn. As I learn, I will teach. That's the way we try to, that's how we practice the suttas, right? And not just learning, we're also practicing the sutta. What we learn, we clear our minds of doubts and also use that in our meditation. Okay? So the discourse on the great connections. Some translators use the word causation, okay, but I use the word connections because Nidana refers to the 12 links. This is one of those really Dhamma-based sutta, but it's placed in the Digha Nikaya. Notice it is in D15, right? So the theme is dependent arising, language, and non-self. So in this sutta, the Buddha talks about how we think about language, how language is possible, and also a bit about non-self. Non-self, I think, will be the second part we probably do next lesson. Okay. So this sutta is so long, you have even the sutta contents for you there. Okay. All right, let's go straight into the sutta now. Go further down. Yeah, there you are. As always, in the case of the long suttas, it starts with, thus have I heard. Right? Ananda is the kind of, he memorizes this and then recites this to the council, the first council for our benefit. At one time, the Blessed One was staying among the Kurus. So this is the Kuru people. There was a market town of the Kurus called Kamasadhamma. Notice what's missing here. There's no mention here that the Buddha is, staying in this place. There was a market town. Of course, the Buddha wouldn't stay in a market town, it'd be too busy. This means, this is the hint that there was no place nearby. So the Buddha went into the forest to stay. Then, of course, right now the monks are sitting down and Ananda is there. Ananda is talking to the Buddha. Then the Venerable Ananda approached the Blessed One, and having approached and saluted the Blessed One, he sat down at one side. Seated thus at one side, the Venerable Ananda said this to the Blessed One. He said this joyfully, of course. It is wonderful, Bhante. It is marvelous, Bhante, how deep this dependent arising is. How deep it appears to be. Yet it is as clear as can be to me. So Ananda is very confident, very happy. Okay, this is a declaration of Dhamma joy. Now, so the Buddha here now kind of like gives him a reality check. Okay. Now, remember, Ananda at this point is only a stream winner. It's not yet an arhat. So he thinks he understands the dependent arising, but he's not liberated yet. So he's very happy that he knows at least in theory, like you and I, we think we understand, at least in theory. Right, so the Buddha gives him a reality check. Do not say so, Ananda. Do not say so, Ananda. Dependent arising appears deep, and it is deep. Ananda, because of not understanding, because of not penetrating this truth, this generation has become like a tangled skein. Tangled skein is a ball of thread, like a knotted ball of thread. Okay, further down, yeah. Like matted munja grass. Okay, so this grass is a sharp grass like lalang like that, and these Sakya warriors would tie this grass together and then kind of wear on their head when they go into battle, meaning they won't retreat. Okay, so like this grass all kind of tangled together, and the reeds all tangled together. Very, very difficult to understand for most people. It does not cross beyond cyclic life, right? We are stuck in samsara. With its plains of misery, its bad destinations, its lower realms. Right? So this is what our world has got, the suffering states. Okay. Now we always think of the suffering states as lower, somewhere far away. Actually, it's right here with us. The moment you go out, you see the 4 subhuman states. You see people behaving like animals, fighting with each other, hurting each other. You see them like asuras, exploit. You go to work and people exploit you. Right? Those are the asuras, especially the boss doesn't care about you. And then you have the animals, human form, but they don't want to learn, they're not interested. They're full of fear of this, fear of that. All they care about is their income, getting food, and their family, and that's it, nothing else. Animal-like life, we say. And then those are very violent, and those are the hell beings, right? Forming each other, killing each other. And this is going around right now in our own world. And now with all this COVID going on, you begin to see many more of this kind of behavior. So it's this subhuman states right here with us. So be careful not to get caught in it, all right? Then the Buddha continues, Ananda, if one were asked, okay, so here the Buddha is saying, we got to get out of this cycle by understanding dependent arising. So he starts teaching, he says, Ananda, if one were asked, is decay and death due to specific condition, right? It has a kind of a, not a cause, but when that condition is present, then decay and death arises. The Buddha continues, one should say, they are. If one were asked, with what condition, with what as condition, is there decay and death? One should say, with birth as condition, there is decay and death. Okay, now simplified, when there is birth, there is decay and death. So this is a kind of very short and clear statement. The fact that we are born, from the moment we are born, we start to decay. Of course, we give nice names to it. We're growing up, we're becoming a child, teenager, an adult. But the reality is we're all ripening, we're growing old. So we don't notice it until we are past 40 or 50. So because of birth, there is this decay, and when there's decay, there is death. So this is a kind of summary of our whole life. Then, to Ananda, if one were asked, is birth due to a specific condition, right? Is there this condition that makes it arise? One should say, it is. If one were asked, with what as condition is there birth? One should say, with existence as condition, there is birth. Okay. So here, when there is birth, of course we exist, we come into being. You notice a baby, how the baby behaves. It is stimulated by sound, sight, so it's learning how to exist, how to become human, to put it simply. So that's a simple way of putting it as becoming existence, our human state, if you like. Ananda, if one were asked, is existence due to a specific condition? Right now, so the Buddha goes on to the next situation. What about existence? What brings it on? What is the condition that brings about existence? Then one should say, it is. If one were asked, with what as condition is there existence? One should say, with clinging as condition, there is existence. So, clinging. When we hold on to something, then this existence grows. We cling to our human state, so we keep growing, changing. Then, number 4 is basically craving leads to clinging, right? But the question is put to make sure that this is remembered well. Ananda, if one were asked, is clinging due to a specific condition? One should say it is. If one were asked, with what as condition is there clinging? One should say, with craving as condition, there is clinging. Right? So that's the key lines I've highlighted for you. With craving leads to clinging. When there's craving, there's clinging. When you first want something, and then when you think you get it, you hold on to it. You don't want to let go. And then the one will ask, is feeling due to a specific condition? One should say it is. If one will ask, with what a specific condition is there feeling? One should say, with contact as condition there is feeling. Okay, you may ask yourself, why is this repetition? Of course, the Buddha wants to make sure that we remember this. Number two, the Buddha is talking. There are no notes here. So the Buddha is talking to Ananda, like the Buddha is talking to us now. In fact, even though you may not have the notes in front of you and you listen to this sutta like this, and you just kind of focus on the way the Buddha says it, then you see it in your mind. That's the idea, to see it in your mind. Okay? The problem about reading from a book is that we may be so focused on the page that we do not hold it in our mind. In Pali, the word is dhareti, to hold it in your mind. Okay? So the idea is to hear it, remember it, learning by listening. So now, stage 6, feeling leads to craving. That's the summary. Okay. So again, the Buddha goes through the whole cycle. And then one will ask, is feeling due to a specific condition? Here, the Buddha wants to make sure that feeling doesn't exist by itself. It is conditioned by something else. The idea of conditioning. Because of A, there is B, right? So because of craving, because of feeling, there is craving. Okay. Then here, feeling, it's kind of like going backwards, if you like. No? So because of feeling, there is a feeling arises from contact. All right. So if you find, oh, I'm a little confused here, then you start with contact first. Because there's contact, there is feeling. Contact here means your sense faculty, say the eye, see something out there, and there is consciousness, you're aware of it. And when the three are present, there is contact. So contact here is sense impression. You're experiencing that particular object, particular sense object. Okay, so that's called contact. It's a special Buddhist term, which is worth remembering. It refers to the way our senses work. When we catch sight of something, when we hear, smell, taste, touch, that's called contact. 7, Ananda, if one were asked, is contact due to specific condition, right? So this contact has this kind of cause, if you like, right? Now, we normally avoid the word cause because it gives the idea like, oh, it comes from there. Actually, it's just they happen together. If there's A, B also exists. So when there is what, there is contact. If there is what, there is contact. The answer here is name and form. Okay, look at the last line. With name and form as condition, there is contact. Okay, here is a bit of a tricky word. It's name and form. Notice the hyphens there. So actually it's treated as a single unit. So it is actually singular. So now you have this bit of problem of English. So we have to treat this as singular, all right? They work together. With name and form as condition, there is contact. Okay, just a quick explanation of name and form. When you see something, whatever it is, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, that's called form, small f form. It's out there. One way of understanding this word is you form an idea. And it is also made out of the 4 elements. That's the interesting thing. But it is your body's experience. So it is name. Sorry, that is form. But you say, what is that? You look at something, you've never seen it before. You say, what is that? And then you give it a name. You say, oh, that's a cup. Okay. Or you see someone, you say, who is that? Oh, right? And then you name this person. then only you can connect. So you have name and form going together. This is what happens when there is this contact, when the senses work to give us sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. Now I've given an example of sight. Sound is the same. You hear something, you say, what's that? Okay, then someone will tell you, oh, that is so and so talking. I say, oh, okay, then you have the form, the name and the form going together. Or you say, oh, what music is that? What's the title of that piece? And then you remember it. Okay? So the music is form, and the title is of course name. Same thing with taste and smell and feeling. Okay? Feeling is a bit more tricky, of course. We can't really name it. We normally name it after people, or we just like it, don't like it. So that's contact. Okay, let's go on now. Further down. Right, so now link 8. Ananda, if one were asked, is name and form due to a specific condition? Right, what does it arise from? Once you say it is, if one were asked with what as condition, is there name and form? Once you say consciousness, with consciousness as condition, there is name and form. Okay, we're coming to even something deeper now. Now, because we are conscious, because there is this mind, there's this consciousness, we name things and we connect them with some form out there because there is consciousness. Later on, you see something interesting. This name and form, they interplay, right? We'll come to that in a while. This is the normal cycle. Yeah? In fact, you see the next one, something interesting already, right? You see the interplay right here, right? Look at 9. Ananda, if one were asked, is consciousness due to specific condition? What you say it is. If one were asked with what as condition is there consciousness, what you say, name and form. With name and form as condition, there is consciousness. I don't know how many of you see it, but if you look at 8 and 9, they are actually the opposite of each other. If you are not familiar with this sutta, you say, oops, is there some typo here? How come the sutta is reversing the sequence? 8 says, name and form arise from consciousness. In other words, consciousness leads to name and form. But look at the last line of 9. With name and form as condition, there is consciousness. It's the other way around, right? Let me simplify one more time. Because of consciousness, we name things, we give names to forms. Because of consciousness, we give names to form, name and form. Now, the new thing you have to learn is, when there's name and form, there is consciousness. I'm going to go quite slow with this to make sure you understand. One more time. How this happens right now. You are listening to me. Let's say you have just come in, you say, what's that? Okay, what are we going to study today? And then you look at the page, you say, oh, okay, Mahanidana Sutta. That's form. And then in your mind, you say, okay, this is the sutta. That's name, form, right? So you're conscious of it. Now, in this number 9, is the example of a baby. This little baby, we say, doesn't know much because it's newly born. So we buy toys for it, remember? We give toys. The toys makes noise. The toys are very colorful. And what does the baby does with the toy? The baby tries to eat the toys. It bites the toys. You notice? You may wonder why the baby bites the toys. The sutta is telling you why. Because this baby is beginning to be conscious of that toy. So the baby first looks at it, it begins to see things, It listens, so hearing, consciousness as hearing arises. It bites it, right? Something like taste, if you like. Okay, so, and then it feels it. Okay, so all these senses begin to grow. Of course, we talk to the baby also. So eye, ear, nose, smell also, right? Baby powder is very nice smelling. Smell, taste, touch. We hold a baby, we often hold a baby, we keep it safe. So this baby is going through all this early education of knowing the senses, and this is how it becomes more conscious through naming and forming. So this is a bit of reflection, okay? So you have from consciousness, there is name and form. From name and form, there is consciousness. Just take it like that. Don't think too much right now, because there are lots of notes after this. You can go on to the introduction, look at the notes after the study. All right, now the Buddha summarizes everything in a neat kind of sequence, starting with name and form again. So here we can see it quite graphically. Thus, Ananda. With name and form as condition, there is consciousness. With consciousness as condition, there is name and form. Right? Notice this. This is called the latent vortex. One monk and one forest monk in Sri Lanka called this the inner vortex. I call it the latent vortex because this is where our latent tendencies are hidden. This is what keeps us going from life after life. This cyclic pattern of our consciousness feeding itself like a Ouroboros, the snake biting its own tail. Name and form, conditioning consciousness, and this consciousness in turn feeds name and form back and forth, back and forth. And then at some point, or at the same time, name and form leads to three. Look at three. With name and form as condition, there is contact. Right? So now the formula goes back in the forward style. Just now was kind of backwards when we started off. So name and form, there is contact. With contact, there is feeling, right? Like, for example, when you touch hot kettle, wow, you can feel it. And with feeling, there's craving. Of course, when you touch a hot kettle, your craving is to get away from it. You don't want to get burnt. Right? That's the craving. Craving has two sides. One is you pull towards something you like, and the other is you push away something that you don't like, something that hurts you. And there's a third factor we're not aware of. When we cannot see either like or dislike, we ignore it, and that is ignorance arises. That's the third aspect. Okay. So there's from feeling, there's craving. With craving, there is, as condition, there is clinging. When we crave for something, when we think we get it, we hold on to it. With clinging as condition, when we cling to something, we become more and more it, our existence. So here, existence is not just saying being human. What's interesting here is this existence is talking about the four subhuman states. Because when we cling to something and then we keep on chasing it and we don't care about other things, we become that kind of being. That's our existence, psychological state here. And with that kind of existence, number 8, as condition, there is birth. So the next life, as I mentioned many times before, you have a human body, but your mind is not human because of the existence is not human. So this existence, this consciousness moves on to the next life. But what consciousness is that? It's an animal consciousness, it's preta consciousness, asura consciousness, animal consciousness, hell being consciousness. Then it becomes that being again in the next life. That's birth. And with that kind of birth, number 9, as condition, there arise decay and death all over again. sorrow, lamentation, bodily pains, mental pain, and despair. The whole samsaric cycle starts again. All right? Such is the arising of this whole mass of suffering. So this is the cycle of the 12 links. But here in this sutta, only 9 links are given. Note that, see? So it's not always 12 links, but a complete one is 12. Okay? Starting with ignorance and formations and so on. So there you are. Just pause for a few seconds and look at this 9 limbs of dependent arising, starting with name and form. There's consciousness. When there's consciousness, there's name and form. And then contact, feeling, craving, clinging, existence, birth. So just get used to this list and then reflect on them. Take one of the limbs at a time, read up the notes, and then try to link with the next one and go on like that. So take your time to understand it. It is a very profound teaching. It takes time, right? Now the Buddha is going to explain further. Okay, let's look at it. Birth, conditioning, decay, and death. So if someone asks you, is there a sutta that gives some details of the definition of each of the links of the 12 links or the 9 links, you can say this Mahanidana Sutta. So look at this one, the definition of birth. 4. It is said, with birth as condition, there is decay and death. Ananda, how birth, conditions, decay, and death should be known in this manner. If, Ananda, there were no birth at all, of any kind whatsoever, in anyone, anywhere, that is to say, of devas into the deva state, of gandharvas into the gandharva state, of yakshas into the yaksha state, of non-humans into the non-human state, of humans into the human state, of quadrupeds into the quadruped state. So the quadrupeds are the animals. So there's a bit more. Let's go down. Of the winged into the winged, so the birds, of reptiles into the reptile state. So here the Buddha is listing different kinds of realms, right? He's elaborating on the various animal realms, also the Deva realm, Gandharvas, Yakshas. The Gandharvas and Yakshas, they are minor deities, if you like. They're not really divine beings, but yet they have some kind of divine power. They're not very powerful. And sometimes they are found on earth. You find them, this kind of stories in all cultures. That's the interesting thing. Gandharvas are these heavenly minstrels, very much like the angels of the West, if you like. The Yakshas are fierce spirits, very strong, very powerful. Okay, every culture have this kind of belief. So now the thing is this: as humans, we don't know whether they exist or not, but it is possible that such a state exists. This kind of beings. Okay. We don't have to believe everything here at the moment because our knowledge is limited. So take what you can understand. Reptiles, birds with wings, polygon animals, humans, no problem with that. Okay, so there's that diversity of life. So the Buddha is saying you have this diversity of life because of birth. Each into its own state, right? So if there were no birth, then Ananda, in the complete absence of birth, with the cessation of birth, would decay and death occur? Certainly not, Bhante, says Ananda. Therefore, Ananda, this itself is the reason, this is the connection or the link, this is the arising, this is the condition for decay and death, that is to say, birth. Now here, let me simplify one more time. How do we have all these animals? Let's say plants would be easier to understand here. You see, plants, they grow, right? You take the seed of the plant and then it falls on the ground and it grows. Right? So we call them genes. So there is this birth, okay? But they're not conscious, right? But in the case of animals, humans, even devas, they're conscious. So they are reborn through karma, through rebirth, through birth. In the case of humans, we reproduce. So we are born into the human state again. So different beings are born different ways. So they re-arise anyway into the kind of state. And these are all mentally formed. The states arise from the mind. It's their mind that differentiates them, kind of birth. Okay, so this is the meaning of birth. Okay, let's go next one, further down. Existence. 5. It is said, the brackets 2 is a numbering of the links again in the one that we looked at above. It is said thus, with existence as condition there is birth. Ananda, how existence conditions birth should be known in this manner. It is Ananda. If Ananda, there were no existence at all of any kind whatsoever in anyone, anywhere, that is to say, the sense existence, the form existence, the formless existence. If there were no existence whatsoever, then in the complete absence of existence, with the cessation of existence, would there be birth? Certainly not, Bhante. So here, by birth, there are meant the 3 worlds. These are kind of bigger category, okay? You have the sense existence, or if you like, we call it the sense world, that's our world, Kama Loka, okay? We depend on the senses. And there are a few Deva worlds also included in the sense world. They depend on the senses, but their senses are more refined than ours. And then you have the form existence, Rupa Loka. This one is their minds are in the jhanas, the form jhanas. Then you have the formless existence. This your mind is even more refined, formless jhanas. So these are the 3 worlds. And these are called existences. So this is a kind of like a generic way of looking at all those beings. Okay. All right. So, therefore, Ananda, this itself is the reason. This is the connection. This is the arising. This is the condition for birth. That's to say, existence. Right. So this part repeats itself. Now the Buddha goes on to the next item, number 6, section 6. Let me simplify this part. Okay, so the Buddha is saying this time clinging. Okay, because of clinging there is existence. What is this clinging? Look at the 3rd line. If Ananda, there were no clinging at all of any kind whatsoever in anyone, anywhere. That's to say, no clinging to sensual pleasure, no clinging to views, no clinging to vows, no clinging to self-doctrine. If there were no clinging whatsoever, then in the complete absence of clinging, with the cessation of clinging, would there be existence? Certainly not. So this is the what's called apophatic language. It's using negative language, right? So we have, in our modern way, we have to kind of reverse it. So the 4 kinds of clinging make us what we are. Number 1, clinging to sensual pleasures. This is a body-based thing where we are caught up with our body, to look nice, or to look healthy, and so on and so forth. We are caught up with the body. It's not that we should neglect the body. It's just in this case, we are so body-based, we are so caught up with the body that we neglect the mind. That's the meaning here. And then instead of cultivating the mind, we abuse. Here, abuse means wrong views. We only see one side of things, and then we discount or we reject all the others. So we abuse, and then there's clinging to ritual and vows. Ritual and vows, we do things. We trying to find solution outside of us, when the real problem is inside us. And then there's a self-doctrine. I, me, mine. Okay, believing that there is this unchanging self. Now, these 4 are very interesting because there is a pattern. You may wonder why there is 4. Number 1, the first clinging to sensual pleasures is body-based. Clinging to views is mind-based. Clinging to rituals and vows is an external fixation. We think that by worshipping something outside, going to a tree or some good luck, first of all, water splash on us, we have good luck, right? So these are rituals and vows. We think that something external can solve something internal. And then the last one is our self itself, something internal, right? Something internal as we think that there is this something internal, permanent, eternal. This self doesn't die. So there you are. So it makes sense now, right? It got to do with the body, the mind, and then external, internal. So these are the four kinds of clinging to these four kinds of wrong views. Okay, let's try one more. Let's see. What's the next one? Okay. So we'll stop here. Then next, when we come back after our 5 minutes break, we will go on to this number 7. Okay?
Okay. Okay, we'll take a 5 minutes break now.
Yeah, let's continue. Section 7, right? Okay, now let's look at link number 7. The Buddha says, it is said thus, with craving as condition, there is clinging. And how, Ananda, craving, conditions, clinging should be known in this way. Craving, conditions, clinging. Even under there were no craving at all, of any kind whatsoever, in anyone, anywhere. That's to say, no craving for physical forms, visible forms, no craving for sounds, no craving for smells, no cravings for taste, no craving for touches, no craving for thoughts or mind objects. If there were no craving whatsoever, then in the complete absence of craving, with the cessation of craving, would there be clinging? Certainly not, Bhante, says Ananda. Therefore, Ananda, this itself is the reason, this is the connection, the link, this is the arising, this is the condition for clinging, that is to say, craving. So what is craving? Yeah, craving for the 6 sense objects. Because we crave for what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, what we touch, what we think. That is, we cling to this idea. Okay, so each of the 9 links in this case, they are linked to something familiar that we have learned before, right? So here it is linked to the 6 sense objects. They are the objects of craving. Okay, let's test what's next. Number 8. Now 8 is quite easy. It's about feelings. But I want you to be familiar with the style of the sutta, how the sutta put it into like a computer coded style. The sequence is always similar. It is said thus, with feeling as condition, there is craving. So first the main statement is made. And how, and Ananda, how feeling conditions craving should be known thus. Okay. If Ananda, there were no feeling at all of any kind whatsoever in anyone, anywhere, is to say, no feeling born of eye contact, no feeling born of ear contact, no feeling born of nose contact, no feeling born of tongue contact, no feeling born of body contact, no feeling born of mind contact. If there were no feeling whatsoever, then in the complete absence of feeling, with the cessation of feeling, would there be craving? Certainly not, Bhante, says Ananda. Therefore, Ananda, this itself is the reason. This is the connection. This is the arising. This is the condition for craving, that is to say, feeling. Feeling leads to craving. And what are these feeling? Feeling arising from what we see, eye contact, right? So here the language is very clear. It's not just seeing, It is explained how the seeing arises. Eye contact, ear contact. Ear contact means when sound arises in the ear. Nose contact, when smell arises in the nose. Now you may think this language is strange. Actually, it's technical in a sense. You notice among the pilots, those say in the flying saucer, you see those alien movies. They say, okay, we have visual contact. Right here, the sutta says eye contact. It's the same, visual contact. You can say feeling born of visual contact. All right. Then we go on with feeling. So there is feeling born of tongue contact here, meaning the contact experience arising from the tongue, tasting. And then there is mind contact from thoughts arising in our minds. So these are the 6 kinds of contact that leads to feeling. When you see something, you don't just see. If you see it as nice and you like it, you think it's not nice, you don't like it. And you think it's neither, you ignore it, right? So that is the feeling arising from this experience. Contact, you can also translate as experience if you like, okay? So each level, each link explains a kind of experience that we go through. All right, now let's look at something new now. The Buddha is going to show us how these links, these 9 links, can be used to explain social problems. It's something very rare, right? Here, normally we see the links used to explain a mental situation, but here social problems. 9. Thus, Ananda, dependent upon feeling, there is craving. Okay, that's part of the old cycle. Now then something new comes. Dependent on craving, there is seeking. Okay, now the language changes. So the Buddha says when you feel something nice or something not nice, there's craving. Craving makes you want the nice things. It makes you push away things you think is not nice. Ignore things which you see you cannot comprehend. So when there's craving, there is seeking. In this case, you want something, so you seek. You run after it. The wrong kind of seeking. Notice the word is tanha. No? Now let's look at the next line. What does seeking? What's the word here? See the Pali word there. Number 3, dependent upon seeking, pariyesana, there is gain. All right. Now you remember there's a sutta called Arya Pariyesana, the noble quest. So you can translate as seeking, you can translate as quest. There's a whole sutta on this Pariyesana. So the Buddha talks about, he says there is the wrong quest and there is the noble quest. Right? So when you seek awakening to understand yourself, in a sense, all of you here, we want to know the Dhamma so that you understand yourself better. That's the noble quest. If you use the Dhamma to gain more money, become more famous, then it is for gain. So it's going to make you get caught in the cycle of dependent arising. Dependent upon seeking, there is gain. Dependent upon gain, there is judgment. Right? We evaluate, we compare, we judge. Dependent upon judgment, there is desire and lust. Right? We get caught up even more. We say, oh, this one's nice, I like this. Dependent upon desire and lust, there is attachment. Right? So it's almost a natural development here, you see. So you get attached to the things that you have. We collect them. Dependent on attachment, there is possessiveness. We hold on to it. Right? We don't want to let go of it. Dependent upon avarice, there is safeguarding. You protect your interests, right? You kind of, you make sure that it is not stolen or you don't lose it. And because of avarice, kind of greed, there is safeguarding. You make sure people won't take it away, and if they do, in fact, that's what happens. dependent upon safeguarding, there arise the taking up of the rod, the stick, taking up of the sword, violence, killing, conflicts, quarrels, disputes, or strife, false speech, numerous bad, unwholesome things. Notice here the last one, instead of saying suffering, here the Buddha is giving graphic examples on the simple level, on the social level. Right? So this is one of the special occasions when the 9 links are applied to social problems, how social problems arise. And then the Buddha puts it back into the traditional form. 10. It is said, dependent on safeguarding, there arise the taking up of the rod, the taking up of the sword, conflicts, quarrels, disputes, strife, slander, false speech, numerous bad, wholesome states. Notice what's happening here. The Buddha explains again, but he starts again from the last item instead of starting from first item again. So it's easier for us to link. So he's talking about the last item and it goes backwards to the first item. So this is the reverse cycle. Ananda, how safeguarding conditions are taking up of the sword, conflicts, quarrels, disputes, false speech, numerous bad, unwholesome states should be known in this manner. Ananda, there were no safeguarding at all of any kind, anyone, anywhere. Then, in the complete absence of safeguarding, the cessation of safeguarding, let me summarize, there will be no fighting and violence and killing and false speech and so on, right? So this is what the Buddha is saying. So here you see this sequence because of safeguarding. Safeguarding leads to violence, fighting, even wars, if you like. Okay. So you can expand it as big as you like. So the Buddha starts with the last item first, but the sequence is the same. The sequence A, B, okay? Safeguarding leads to violence. Okay, now the Buddha goes back to number 9. So here we press 2. He says, it is said, dependent upon avarice, there is safeguarding. If you like, you can say dependence on selfishness, there is safeguarding. So here again, the Buddha said, you see this happening, right? So this is the stage that brings about all those previous states which are mentioned. Okay, so we just summarize. It's quite simple here. Okay, next, 12, further down. It is said, dependent upon possessiveness, there is avarice, and how possessiveness, conditions of avarice should be known in this manner, right? So if there were no possessiveness of any kind whatsoever, so there'll be no avarice, right? So here the Buddha is kind of like once going through again so that we remember this. Further down, 13, it is said, dependent upon attachment, there is possessiveness, right? So attachment leads to possessiveness. So everything is repeated here so that we can listen to it and then get some idea. It is a repeat of the previous formula. And then 14, it is said, dependent upon desire and lust, there is attachment. And Ananda, how desire and lust, conditioned attachment should be known in this manner. If you don't have this, if you don't have B, you don't have A. All right. So the Buddha is kind of going through the cycle again at the top. And next, number 15, verse 15. It is said, dependent upon judgment, there is desire and lust. And we should know how this happens. Right? You reflect in your daily life how judgment leads to desire and lust, valuing this, valuing that. This is worth so much. Now we get caught up with this. Okay. All right, next. It is said, dependent upon gain, there is judgment, right? So when you gain something, you say, okay, how much is this worth? What can I do with this? And so on, right? And then 17, you go to the first step now, seeking. All this comes from looking for this, looking for that. And when you look for this, look for that, gain arises. All right. So what the Buddha wants us to do here is see this series of causes and effect, the connection, the links. And then the last one, dependent on this seeking, this arises from craving. The Sutta language says, dependent upon craving, there is seeking. So it all starts from craving. Of course, I'm sure in some of you, the question may arise, wow, how do we practice this? Because as lay people, we're caught up with all this. We want a house, we want a car, we want this, we want that. We go to the market, we want to buy food. But those are your daily routine. If you do it like that and you don't think much about it, you don't become unhappy because you don't get what you want, but you try your best and then you know when to stop, then you're fine. You see, you're doing it happily. It's very important. You're doing it happily, and when you don't get what you want, you're not troubled by it. You look for alternatives. Then it's not craving. That's the difference. In this case, the starting point is craving. Then that creates problems. That's the meaning here. So reflect on this so that your daily routine, your daily life will be pleasant. You're not caught up with this cycle of seeking, and then it goes on to all the other negative sequences. You'll be surprised. This formula for social problems can be used in family life, social life, and outside of religion. It's very interesting, this one. So reflect on this interesting cycle on social strife. Okay. Now we're coming to, what's the next one? Let's look at this. Feeling again, all right? So here the Buddha says, with contact as condition, there is feeling, and under how contact conditions feeling should be known in this way. If Ananda, there were no contact at all of any kind whatsoever, if anyone, anywhere, that is to say, there were no eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, or mind contact, then the complete absence of contact, the cessation of contact, there's no feeling. Right? Certainly not Bhante, says Ananda. Therefore, Ananda, this itself is the reason, this is the connection, this is the arising, this is the condition for feeling, that's to say, contact. So here, the Buddha again is closing off the explanation of how contact leads to feeling. And then next, what leads to contact? Here, Buddha reminding us one more time, name and form is the condition for contact. No name and form, no sense experience called contact. All right. Now notice here that there's something added here. Second line, Ananda, how name and form conditions contact should be known in this manner. Ananda, these qualities, traits, signs, indicators, by which there is description or definition, panyati, of the mental body or mental group. If these qualities, traits, signs, and indicators by which there is a description of the mental body were all not there, then would conceptual contact or conceptual impression manifest in the physical body? Certainly not, Bhante. Okay, this is the really difficult part, which I want to explain to you as far as I can understand it. Now let's go back to the top a bit. Okay, here the Buddha is talking about name and form again, remember, okay? How we give names to forms, how we give name to things. So here the Buddha says there are these qualities, traits, signs, and indicators. So these are different ways we look at things. We look at their quality, their traits, the signs, indicators of things. That's how we name things. For example, you go to the market, you buy fish, you say, oh, this fish has got this name, toman fish, and whatever fish, right? And you look at the vegetables, you say, oh, this is chaisim, or this is cabbage, and so on. So there are names to it. How do they know it is chaisim? How do they know it is cabbage? There are qualities, traits, signs, indicators, which they have learned over time. All right. So the Buddha is saying, now because you have all these ideas of names, then the mind uses all this to name physical things. Mental body here refer to the mental aggregates. All right. Consciousness, perception, feeling, and so on. Then further down, the mental body refers to the form aggregate, especially the 4 elements, earth, water, fire, wind. So the mind looks at what's out there, what is chaisim and cabbage and so on. They're all 4 elements, but we give them names because we want to buy them, we like them, want to cook with them, and so on. Okay, so we give them names. That's how we connect with things, by naming them. Now brackets 2. If and under these qualities, traits, signs, and indicators by which there is a description of the physical body, if these quality, traits, signs, and indicators by which there is a description of the physical body were not there, then would sense contact, sense impression manifest in the mental body? Certainly not, Bhante. Another profound statement. Simple example. We give names, all right? For example, someone may say, oh, I like chaisim. Someone may say, oh, I like durian. But someone, no, the things the whole world knows about durian, so it's not a very good example. So I'm going to use something I like called queenie, okay? I don't know how many of you, not many of you have heard of queenie, but this queenie has got a special kind of smell, which is really nice and sweet. But if you have never heard of it, you won't have any craving for it. But I know what queenie is. So if you say queenie, a certain idea arises in my mind. I'll probably say, oh, I want that, right? Something like that, right? So if you like something, you name it, and then you have this idea, okay, these are the qualities, this is the smell. You might even talk about it over coffee, over some meeting, or Chinese New Year's coming, you get together, nothing left to talk about, so you talk about these things, right? So because you have all these names, then the craving also get package deal that comes with it. So that's how our mind works. Very subtle here. So you got to really reflect on this in your free time, what Buddha's saying here. So read it one more time, okay? I've given a simple explanation. Let's see, what happens next? What number is it now? Is it 3, right? Even under this qualities, traits, signs, and indicators by which there is a description of mental body and physical body, and these quality, traits, signs, and indicators by which there is a description of this mental body and physical body were not there, then would conceptual contact or sensual contact manifest itself? Certainly not, Bhante. Okay, here the Buddha is talking about both the mental aggregates and the physical aggregates, right? So it says, because we give names. No, actually the Buddha is going back to name and form here. He is describing name and form in the more detailed way. We give names to things, and then we decide. Mentally, we give names to ideas. We say, oh, this is nice, that is what, and then we get caught up. Scholars especially with name theories and so on, we get caught up with attachment there. The attachment is on the physical level as well as mental level. That's the meaning here. Okay. So number 4, if and under these qualities, traits, signs, and indicators by which there is a description of the name and form. Notice there you are, name and form. These qualities, traits, signs, and indicators by which there is a description of the name and sign were all not there. Would there be contact? Certainly not, right? So if you don't have this, you don't have name and form, no name and form, no contact, right? Okay, so next. So up to there, the Buddha stops just to show how name and form and consciousness goes round and round, you see. And then here, the Buddha is talking about our existential consciousness, 21. It is said, with consciousness is conditioned, there is name and form. Ananda, how consciousness conditions name and form should be known in this manner. If Ananda, there were no consciousness to descend into a mother's womb, would name and form take shape in a mother's womb? Certainly not, Ananda. This one is called existential consciousness. This is the consciousness that brings us a rebirth. So here the Buddha says this consciousness joins or enters the fetus in the mother's womb, and that's how it is reborn. So the fetus is the physical body, and this consciousness comes in, and then it grows to become human beings. So this refers to the existential consciousness. Here is existential consciousness, rebirth consciousness, right? So they have different names for it. Okay, there's a being to be born. If Ananda, after descending into the mother's womb, the consciousness were to depart, in other words, this consciousness somehow goes away, right? It's no more there. The body is no more alive, in other words. That's the meaning here. Okay. Then 21.3, if Ananda, the consciousness of a young boy or a young girl were to be cut off, would name and form grow, develop, and mature? Certainly not. So even in the child, if the consciousness is gone, the child will be no more child, the child will die, right? So this consciousness must be present at different stages from the womb, the child, or whole life. This consciousness forms us. So this is called existential consciousness, the consciousness that gives us birth and rebirth. And now we come to the last part here. Let's look at cognitive consciousness. Now, this is quite familiar. It is said with name and consciousness as condition, there is consciousness. And how name and form conditions consciousness should be known in this manner. If Ananda, there were no name and consciousness to find a footing in consciousness, would there be further arising of birth, decay, death, and suffering? Certainly not, Bhante. So here the Buddha is saying that this consciousness, here actually it is technically still rebirth consciousness. It must have name and form. Here name and form refers to this body that exists so that it can couple, it can join with consciousness and then continue life, right? You can also take this to mean that this name and form is something that's continuing in our life right now. Let's see the last part here, the next section here. So this is how it happens. Here the Buddha says, it is thus far, Ananda, that one can be born or decay or die or fall away or re-arise. Notice born or decay or die. Fall away actually also means die for the heavens, for the gods, and then re-arise means reborn. So here the Buddha is saying all these things he has said, has taught us the 9 links that you've heard today. Thus far, there's a pathway for destination. Now, because of all this that the Buddha has explained, we designate, we define things until we kind of, we see things in a certain way, all right? Thus far, there is a pathway for language. Our language, in a way, defines our desires and keep us desiring those things. And thus far, there is a pathway for description. We describe all those things that we like. We talk about it endlessly. Also, on the good side, thus far, there is a sphere for wisdom, for knowing. So here, this wisdom, panya, refers to a wide range, bad knowledge to good knowledge, so we can be free also. He said, by this very fact that we understand the links, we can also be free from it. Thus far, there is the samsaric round of lives and turns for describing this state of being. Right? So we understand how this cycle of life and death occur. That is, when they exist name and form together with consciousness. Wow, look at this. The Buddha is simply talking about name and form and consciousness from the start until now, how we look at things, name things, and then how all this take place as rebirth. Now, you may understand just a small percentage of what I said today. That's fine. It took me a long time to understand this also, but the process has begun. That's how we learn the sutta. You start somewhere, it takes years, sometimes decades to understand the deeper meaning. That's what we are talking about, living with the suttas. So as we mature in our understanding, we look at the sutta and say, oh, I know this better now. The thing is, you have some idea of it, but they're not connected in the right ways. So what you need is a maturing of your mind to arrange all this information correctly. Then you say, wow, now this is clear, now I understand. You give yourself that time. This is what sutta learning is about in terms of the Dhamma. So this is where I'll stop today. Then, because the next section is talking about how views arise. Now, that is another interesting area which we'll look at the next time. Okay, so we'll end here for the sutta learning. For the moment, for question time.
Thank you, Brother Piya. Feel free to ask question now. You can type in the chat box.
Exim is
here.
Yes.
Okay. Sister Exim.
Yes, Sister Randy. Thank you, Brother Piya, for the sutta teaching. My brothers and sisters, you're invited to type your questions in the chat box, or you can ask your question verbally by raising your hands and then later unmute. Okay, let me read the first question from in the chat box from George.
Okay.
Some monks say that the correct interpretation of dependent arising cannot be 3 life, but 1 life, because the suffering is not stopped in the future. This is confusing to me.
Oh, don't worry. These are just opinions of people. You can see 1 life, 3 life, up to you, really. Because if you say 1 life, we're talking about in this life itself, you can see dependent arising. Okay, cause effect, cause effect. Take it as condition, cause effect, cause effect. Whereas if you look at the way all the travelings are laid out, it can only mean 3 life. In other words, what we are now is partly due to our past conditions. Karma we have done before in past lives, so they come back to feed us, to define us, shape us, and also present conditions, right? Because the present conditions also take care of us. We take care of our health and so on. So you've got past conditions, you've got present conditions. And then if you say dependent arising only works in this life, then we are denying rebirth. Then that's a quite tricky problem, right? So I don't think we can say correctly that there's only 1 life dependent arising. Okay. Anyway, remember, different people have their opinions. It doesn't mean the moment someone expresses an opinion, no matter how important they are, you should get worried about it. It's their opinion. And remember, the Buddha says even famous monks have got wrong views. Just say, okay, this is their view. This is my understanding. So in that sense, nobody's right, nobody's wrong. But important is how well do you understand it? So don't let the views of other people define your fears, your own understanding. You decide what you want to know, how you know it. All right, so stay with that. Have faith in the Dhamma through your own aspiration. Don't worry about what other unawakened people tell you or seem to say. Okay? So personally, I would prefer the 3 life explanation that shows you, that keeps in terms with the Buddha's teaching. The 1 life is talking about, for example, name and form, how you see name and form. Okay, so these are all what called technical academic things. Don't really worry too much about them. I mean, it's like you hear your neighbors quarreling, and then you get worried and say, oh dear, what's going to happen to me? They're quarreling. I mean, there's no connection, right? Isn't it? So we don't worry about it, right? Oh, I see a new arrangement now. Ratna, did you do it?
Yes, I do it.
Okay, we are in a classroom in a
Yes.
university lecture hall. Interesting. Okay. The next
Thank you,
question.
Brother Piya.
All right.
The next question from Brother Kenny.
Sure.
Does habitual tendency have clinging as condition or not?
Of
How
course.
do you take it in this case?
Oh, habitual conditions. What was the Pali word? Is the Pali word mentioned there? Habits, is it?
Habits.
Yeah, habits. Who's the questioner?
Brother Kenny.
Oh, Kenny, do you know the Pali word or not? Or you're thinking of habits generally? I'll take it as habits. Nah? Whatever action we do, because we are not awakened, it is rooted in either ignorance or craving. Okay, so that is the simple answer. So it goes back to ignorance or craving. They go together, right? We don't really know which one, but they both act together. Because of our ignorance, we want this, we want that, because we don't really know what we want. You notice when you go shopping, you say, oh, I want to buy this. But after so that's your craving, you want that. But after you got it, you look at it, and then you say, oh, that's not what I want. And your craving is at work again. And then you lose interest because your craving sees the negative side of it. The craving is never satisfied. You see? So craving is like that. There's this negative aspect also. So I hope that helps. Okay, let's
Okay, thank you, Brother Piya.
Mm.
The next question from Zhi Guan Liu.
Okay.
Is today's teaching somewhat related to what is being expounded in Mahayana's Heart Sutra?
The Heart Sutra tries to summarize it's something about what's called emptiness, non-self. Okay. I don't think it's that close because the Heart Sutra is more talking about no form, sound, and so on. So it's reflecting on non-self, right? Whereas today's sutta, the Buddha is explaining condition, cause effect, all right? So they're a different approach, slightly different approach. I would say it's different, yeah. On the other hand, if you look deep, yeah, there's always something similar, but by way of teaching, it's different, okay? Because the Mahanidana talks about conditionality. How whatever happens to us depends on conditions. They don't happen just like that. They don't happen by accident. They don't happen because of luck. They don't happen for a reason. We say, you know, these people like to say, oh, whatever happens, happens for a reason. You know, what does it mean for a reason? Who gives the reason? It's you and I who gives the reason. Very subjective. In other words, we are very biased. We say, oh, if we don't like someone, we say, oh, this guy is suffering because he did something bad to me, right? So this saying that everything arises because for a reason sometimes doesn't make sense. We say it arises from conditions. Conditions, it means what? His past karma, present conditions, they are right, and then the karma ripens. All right. So conditions make things happen. Whatever happened, there are many conditions. For example, someone's house burned down. We say, oh, fire. But fire is only one condition. There are many other conditions. For example, they kept a lot of things in the house, and the house is very old, made of wood, and then somebody didn't turn off the oven maybe, and there's gas and so on. So there are many, many conditions, not just one. See, that's the meaning here. Whatever happens to us happens because there are many conditions. The Heart Sutra is talking about something else, okay? The Heart Sutra is talking about there is really no form, no sound, no feeling, okay? That's reflecting on non-self, okay? All right.
Okay, thank you, Brother Piya. The next question from Lim Ka Hong.
Okay.
Why there is no mention of ignorance and karma in this sutta?
Yeah, because it is a very difficult sutta, notice. So the Buddha only focused on the middle part, starting with how we name things, name and form, all right? So we call those missing parts as implied, they are there. But the Buddha is just taking like a window, just presenting to us a certain part so that we will understand that difficult part, and then we can connect it with the missing three later on, okay? With ignorance. All these are because of ignorance and cravings, right? So it's not that the Buddha has removed it. No, it's just that he said, okay, I'm going to describe to just this part, just these 9 links, so that we can understand better without having to process so many links, because it's a difficult sutta, okay? For simplicity, in other words. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Brother Piya. The next question from Cole and Family.
Okay.
Can Brother Piya please re-explain existential consciousness and cognitive consciousness? Are these similar to Abhidhamma's term of Patisandhi and Bhavanga respectively? Thank you.
Patisandhi Bhavanga, okay. Patisandhi is rebirth consciousness. That refers, depends on, in this life, it is called Chuti Chitta. In this life, there's a dying thought. This is Abhidhamma, by the way, okay, not the sutta. If you look at from the new life, the first consciousness arising is called Patisandhi Chitta, okay, rebirth consciousness. So it's very technical, this Abhidhamma. Bhavanga refers to what's going on right now, okay? It's there, like you and I sitting here. There is Bhavanga, but if you are awake and listening to me, the Bhavanga is, you don't see the Bhavanga. Your consciousness is working, so the Bhavanga is not there. The Bhavanga is like current, hidden there. But if you fall asleep, the Bhavanga will arise. The Bhavanga will maintain the connection. So you wake up, you're still here, okay? So that's a Bhavanga, the life continuum. Yeah, I would say they're quite similar in that way. The Bhavanga is happening right now. So that is existential consciousness. You can use it in the same way. And the other one is what we call, wait, let me get it right. Cognitive consciousness, rather. Cognitive consciousness, what's going on right now through your senses. That is the Bhavanga. And the Patisandhi is the rebirth. That's rebirth consciousness is the existential consciousness, okay? These are just big terms, okay? So just existential means to exist. Cognitive means to know, okay, what's going on in your life. Okay? I'm just using this for those who are reading English. You can use Patisandhi Chitta, rebirth consciousness, existential consciousness. Bhavanga refers to what's going on now. But they overlap. They're not equals, Some parts are different. So we cannot say they are exactly the same. Some parts only the same. For example, when the broader term is existential consciousness. So part of it is the Bhavanga. Yeah, but the general idea is correct. You can read up some more in the suttas. Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you, Brother Piya. The next question from Brother Gohan Kui.
Yes, sure.
Brother Piya, in the lesson just now, it was highlighted about the existential conditioning, sense existence, form existence, and the formless existence. How does this apply to the formless existence where the existence is based on mind and not the senses? Thank you.
If you look at that part of the sutta, it talks about the 3 worlds. So what the Buddha is saying, it is because of all this conditioning, you can be reborn in any of the 3 worlds. So when you're reborn in the formless world, of course, you leave behind, so to speak, you leave behind the body. So that's because of rebirth. That's because of rebirth. So that's the meaning here. You don't need the body there. All right. So it doesn't mean just because the Buddha mentioned body, you must have the body too. It's not necessary. Okay. Because here we're talking about this person, if he's going to deep meditation, is able to let go of attachment to the body. So he reaches a formless world. Okay. So this one's a bit tricky. Just give it some thought, right? For what I just said.
Thank you, Brother Piya.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question in the chat box at the moment.
Okay.
Any
Now,
brother and sister would like to raise a verbal question?
we've got 10 more minutes. And now can we go back to the old arrangement? I can't see some faces here. Lots of empty seats.
You need not turn on your video. Just turn on your video.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brother Piya, there's one question from Alan Tan.
Yes. Upon
death,
yeah,
the cognitive consciousness ends and existential consciousness lives on to enter the womb to continue life.
Yeah, you can put it one way. Rather, we can say this cognitive consciousness for this life ends in this life. All right, because cognitive consciousness can only arise when you have you exist, is it? Right, your consciousness. So then it re-arises all over again in next life. Imagine a seed, okay, simplified to a seed. Once you have the seed is just a tiny little thing. But once you put in the ground with the right condition, wow, this seed grows, and then you have this plant all over again. Everything grows. Where does all the greenness, the branches, and the leaves and the flowers come from? In a manner of speaking, you can say it comes from the plant, the genes, yes. But remember, you also have the external conditions. You need the minerals, the earth, the air, the sun, the rain, water, and so on. So conditions, many conditions work together to produce us, the human being. Many conditions work together to produce you, not just your body, but also your knowledge, your views, and so on. Okay. Okay, we have about 7 more minutes.
Thank you, Brother Piya. Yeah, no more question at the moment. Thank you.
Okay.
There's a continuous question from Alan Tan.
All right.
When does the new cognitive consciousness begins? Is it upon birth?
Technically, yes, upon birth. When the child is born, from the moment of being born, knowing starts to the senses, to all the senses, okay? But life is set to begin once the Gandhava or the rebirth consciousness enters the child, the fetus. There's a big problem here. We don't know when that happens, okay? So modern science tells us after so many weeks or months, you know. So this one we need to understand a bit better. Maybe this way modern science can help us to understand. But traditionally, it is said that when the fetus is formed, it is alive, okay, it's something like that. But we don't know when the consciousness goes in. That's the thing, okay? So because we can also say plants are also alive in a sense, right? The plants live also, but the plant has no consciousness. That's the difference. So these are technical differences, which I can't tell you that I totally understand also, because these are very deep things that you need the awakened mind to look into completely. What is life in the plants? What is life in the human? How you define this life? But it's very tricky, right? But the funny thing is, we know we are alive there. We have consciousness. The difference is plants don't have that kind of consciousness. Plants cannot decide. Some people will tell you, oh, plants can talk. No, I don't think plants can talk. Those stories you hear is probably because there are other beings inhabiting the plants, like tree devas, and so on. All right, so it's not the plant itself, not the tree itself. All right, any other question?
Thank you, Brother Piya. No question at the moment.
Okay, we've got 5 more minutes. 5 minutes will pass very fast. Huh? I'm very happy to have you all for this new year. Hope you'll take care of yourself during this COVID season, because I don't know, I like to have a feeling that the COVID is slowly going away, but you still read the papers, so many things going on, so just take care. All right, so you're on your own in many ways, right? This is what the Buddha's teaching is about. Social distancing means keeping the precepts, right? Covering your mouth, all this. So this is keeping the precepts, right? To be safe. You're keeping your body safe, yeah. And also not spreading to others. Because sometimes you can be strong, you have the bacteria, whatever, and then you may spread to others. So we keep ourselves strong. Social distancing. The Buddha has been teaching social distancing since he started teaching, right? But remember, everything will pass, right? Very soon we forget all about it as if it never happened, and then we go back to our routine, and then something else happen in the future, okay? So I was at the university in US today, and then you find there are people going around almost back to normal, but not back to normal yet. So you can notice that normality is slowly coming back. So it's very important that we take care of our health, right? Each of us. Huh? The idea of taking care of your health is if you have a healthy body, then your mind also is have better chance to stay healthy, right? So do some simple exercise. If you're young, start young. You're better. Then as you grow old, you find it's easier to exercise. And that
Brother Piya, Sister
Yeah?
Ratna raised her hand, and
Okay.
there's one question in the chat box.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Sister Isim.
Mm-hmm.
Piya, could you share with us your session at the NUS today?
Okay, I'll do what I can in the last few minutes. If anybody has a question, just let me know, right? Today's session is from, you see, you have the medical department and you also have the psychology department. So now these two, they're like combined, and then this professor is in charge of both. Psychology is part of the medical department, and she invited me to talk about mindfulness because the students are studying mindfulness. They're still struggling with the idea, how do you define mindfulness? Because even the psychologists, the scientists, are still not sure how you define mindfulness, how to measure mindfulness. I told them, you can't measure mindfulness because according to Buddhism anyway, you have the immeasurables, okay? The Brahma Viharas, for example, the whole idea of meditating is to open up our minds, not to measure things. So mindfulness cannot be measured. So this is one of the really, really big problems that the scientists have to face. How do you have a psychology of mindfulness without measuring mindfulness? So I told him, work this out. If you can find a solution for this, then psychology has a lot to contribute to the future. And of course, he did some meditation, body scan meditation. They're trying to learn different kinds of meditation so that the psychologists, future psychologists can practice themselves and know what they are using. All right. So basically, that's what it's about. Any other question?
Yes, Brother Piya, there's one last question from Call and Family.
All right.
Does the mental body refers to chitta chetasikas,
No.
while the physical body refers to 5 aggregates?
No, the both terms refer to 5 aggregates. Mental body, namakaya, refers to the mind group that is feeling, perception, formation, consciousness, attention. And then the other one is the body group, right? Body group. or physical body refers to form, the four elements. So they're both, the two terms refer to the five aggregates, right? Cetasika is Abhidhamma. So the term is not found in the sutta, so I don't think I'll fit here. There are some indirect mention, but not directly the way the Abhidhamma look at it. So I wouldn't bring in Cetasika. It's going to be very confusing here, because that's not what it means in the sutta anyway. Okay. So you got Nama Kaya, Rupa Kaya. That's the two terms, right? Nama Kaya. Notice there's Nama Rupa. So this sutta is about Nama Rupa. It's about how we use name and form in our lives. So that's one way of summarizing the sutta. Okay. So do reflect on the sutta. Spend some time reading introduction if you can. Okay. Right. It's 10 o'clock. If you have some final questions, any last minute questions?
Yeah,
No.
brothers and sisters, please turn on your videos.
Okay. Photograph time, right.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, it's always very nice to see you all from all over the world. All right. Okay, Doris, where are you? We don't see your picture. We only see, I don't know what this is a piece of cloth or something. Okay. That's nice. Okay, give a smile. Yeah. I keep going so near the camera, you only see my forehead. Huh? You've got to remind me. It's really good to see so many old friends. So stay healthy, eat healthy, keep your mind healthy, okay? And read some notes on the introduction to the suttas. All right.
Okay, Sister Kahong, cannot see your face. All right. Brother Chow Eng, you don't have a camera.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Alfred, don't smile, okay?
1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let us close with the closing reflection, closing salutations. Every time we are gathered here, I remember someone 2,500 years ago sat under a tree and realized some wonderful truth. And this truth is so clear and so pervasive, it's come down even to our times. We're very fortunate to be in touch with these teachings, to practice them, and to see how true they are even today. The truth never dies in that sense, but it can be forgotten, so we cannot take it for granted. So you have sacrificed, you have renounced a bit to come here and practice the Dhamma through keeping precepts, through your meditation, through cultivating wisdom, the three trainings. Reflect on this wonderful good karma you have by the power of all these good deeds we have done today. May we be well and happy. Send your thoughts to your loved ones and friends and neighbors, people important to you. Wish them well and happy. Even our enemies, people who don't like us, people we have problems with, may their minds are clear up, they see the Dhamma, show their love for Dhamma, and include us in their lives too. And may all the animals and other beings to be safe and well and happy. Let us now bow to our three jewels. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. So good night, everyone. And auf Wiedersehen to those in Germany and Europe. And also, how do you say goodbye in Spanish? Okay. This, okay.
Guten Abend in Germany.
Yes, yes, guten Abend. Yes, that's right.
Evening,
Oh,
guten
good to see you.
Abend, goodbye.
Yeah.
Auf
Thank you,
Wiedersehen.
Brother
Auf Wiedersehen.
Piya, Sister Ratna.
Yeah. Thank you for attending. See you all again.
Thank you, Brother
I-
Piya.
Thank you, Brother Pia.
Everyone.